Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Hack, and in this video you're checking out our ultimate grind god build for the Stamina Dragonknight. This is a brand new, unique build for the Flames of Ambition DLC. I'm calling this build the Double Dragon because we have both Fire Breath and Poison Breath at the same time on the Stamina Dragonknight. Now if you haven't seen one of my grind god builds before, this is not a DPS build. This is basically an AoE burst build designed to kill as many enemies as possible, as quickly as possible, grinding out those champion point ranks. And not only that, these builds are extremely easy. One skill bar, easy to obtain gear, and just a lot of fun to play, so let's jump right into it. All right, everybody, we are back on the Stamina Dragonknight with an updated build for Flames of Ambition. It's going to be our Grind God Stam DK, so let's jump right into it with the buff stats. Looking at about 12,000 max magicka, 21,000 max health, and 30,000 max stamina. Our recoveries do go up a little bit with a potion. Forgot to do that. So 800 magicka recovery, 600 health, and 1,800 stamina recovery. Our buffed weapon damage is looking very solid, over 6,000 there. 51% weapon critical. And then our resistances are decent. Remember, with these one-bar grind builds, we're really not worried about defense at all. We just want to push out as much AoE burst damage as possible. So 64 points into stamina, obviously, as a Stamina Dragonknight. We're running the Lava Foot Soup. This is a great buff. This patch, you guys, you get the max stamina and tons of stamina recovery. And remember, we don't need as much health this patch with the extra health added to all base stats, plus champion points. Mundus Stone, we're running the Lover Mundus for the extra spell and physical penetration. We are using both damage types on this setup, so that will be helpful. Major Prophecy, Major Savagery, we'll talk about where those come from in just a minute. Now for the potions on this build, I am running Tri-Stat potions currently. That does help a little bit with the Magicka Sustain, though it's not really necessary. If you want to save some money, then feel free to use just basic stamina potions. That's totally fine. And then the race is up to you as well. I'm going with the good old Orc. Number one, I want the weapon damage. Number two, I want the speed. This build is already extremely fast, but the bonus sprint speed of Orc does help, when going from group to group, trying to kill enemies as quickly as possible. Plus, it reduces the cost of sprint, which is actually really nice on this setup. You also get the max health, which is decent. You get a free heal every 4 seconds, which is not bad, plus the max stamina. So Orcs are very nice overall, still for this type of content. Of course, many, many good options are still there, whether you want Wood Elf, Khajiit, Dark Elf, Redguard, Nord, basically anything that has some stamina-focused stats will be good for this setup. So that covers the basics. Let's talk about the gear next. Starting with our first 5-piece set. Hang with me for a couple minutes. Let me go through this. We're using the Ashen Grip set, a 2-trait crafted set from the base game. This set is actually pretty cool for this build, and I'll explain why as I go through this. So the stats, if you're not familiar, you get max health, you get weapon damage, you get weapon crit, which is all good for a Stamina Dragonknight. And then whenever we deal melee damage, we're going to breathe fire on all enemies in front of us, doing about 6k flame damage, and that can occur once every 4 seconds. So on this build, I'm looking for upfront damage, and I'm looking for AoE upfront damage specifically, and Ashen Grip just kind of goes with that. It also goes with the flavor of this build, which I'm calling the Double Dragon, because we're doing Flame Breath, combined with the Noxious Breath poison attack from the Dragonknight. So basically the two main elements being flame and poison that the Dragonknight class is known for. We're going to actually be able to apply both of those at the same time due to this set. Now, yeah, the damage isn't insane. I wish it was a little bit stronger, but for a 2-trait crafted piece from the base game, this is not bad. Remember, a lot of these upfront proc sets have gotten nerfed in the past, whether it's like Viper or Sunderflame set. Those no longer do upfront damage. Those were all changed to dot effects. And Ashen Grip is one of the few actual sets that still does an upfront burst of damage that's not damage over time. And this is actually AoE too. It's not single target damage. So this works very good for grinding enemies. So how do you run this? Very simple. You're going to run 2 pieces as your weapon. Remember, 2-handed weapons count for 2, and then 3 pieces of jewelry. The weapon, I'm going to run with the Maul on this one. The extra physical and spell penetration from Maul is very useful. And then Precise as the trait on this with a weapon damage enchant. Remember, this is just a 1-bar setup, so every time you use that, you'll get the weapon damage on your front bar as well. Here's the jewelry. So we've got the neck and 2 rings, weapon damage on everything, infused on everything. If you have that option for crafting, because that's going to scale your weapon damage, as you saw, over 6k on the Stamina Dragonknight. It works really well, and we don't really need any extra sustain at all. Our second set, in order to maximize the speed and damage, Griffin's Ferocity. This is from the Somerset chapter, or you can purchase this on Guild Traders. It's another Overland set, so very easy to get. The stats here are good as well. You get 2 weapon critical bonuses, weapon damage again, and then when you deal direct damage, which is basically all of our attacks, you get Minor Force and Minor Expedition for free, so 10% bonus crit damage, 15% movement speed, and yeah, this build is fast, and the extra crit damage does help. We'll talk about that when we get to the skills in just a minute. So 5 pieces on the body here, chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. Stamina on everything. Training would be ideal if you're using this exclusively to grind champion points. That's going to give you the most experience, obviously. So training on as many pieces as you can get. I think I have just 5 set up right now, but more is obviously better. Really, the only thing I don't recommend doing training on is your main hand weapon, because you're just going to lose so much stats from not running precise if you run training instead. So I would recommend keep that as precise. And then finally, for the monster set, I'm using 2 mix match pieces on the basic setup. So Slimecraw gives me extra crit chance, and then Veladrith gives me extra weapon damage. Remember, on this type of content and these type of builds, stuff dies so fast that most monster sets won't even have time to proc or go off. So the flat stats in this case are really good. You can even run 2 pieces of like the trainee set for even more flat stats if you want. So that's the basic build. Again, we've got Ashen Grip weapon and jewelry. We've got the Griffin set on the body, 2 mismatched monster pieces, whatever you want here for the basic setup. Now, there is a mythic setup, which I mentioned in the intro, which is fantastic. I love running this as a mythic build, and the way we're going to run that is with a Wild Hunt ring. So Wild Hunt ring, you need antiquities, obviously, to get this, but this increases your movement speed by 15% in combat and 45% outside of combat. This is a ton of speed on this build, you guys, whether you're running from pull to pull or just, running across zones. This is a really nice item to pick up. Now, I do want the same enchant here being weapon damage. Infused, if you can transmute that, will give you as much weapon damage as possible. But this just means we're going to have to move one of those monster pieces around. So instead of Slimecraw, for example, you could run the helmet of the Ashen Grip there. And so you're going to maintain your 5-piece Ashen Grip, your 5-piece Griffin. You'll have 1 shoulder piece of your choice. And then again, running the mythic Wild Hunt ring here in the ring slot. So there you go. That is the mythic setup. Let's jump into skills next on the 1-bar build. 1 bar is really all you need on this setup, you guys. It's so powerful. If you do want to see a 2-bar setup, with a little bit more flexibility, then check the written guide down in the description or the pinned comment. I will have the full layout for 2 skill bars there if you want. First ability is going to be Noxious Breath from the Ardent Flame Dragonknight skill line. That's our 3rd ability there. Noxious Breath is the stamina morph. So this thing is insane, you guys. Upfront burst damage plus damage over time. And if this crits, you're looking at 15k damage easily in an AoE. Remember, this is AoE, not single target. It's a cone. And remember, we also have the Fire Breath from the Ashen Grip set proccing on top of this. So easily 20k upfront burst damage just from this 1 skill. All in the conal area in front of you. It's really powerful. Cheap to cast. And yeah, can't say enough about this ability. It's really strong for grinding XP. Next up, Stampede. This is going to be from the 2-handed skill line, which is our main weapon on this build. So Stampede is really good, and I don't think a lot of people realize how this works. So why wouldn't you use the other morph, right? Crit Rush is the other morph. It does more damage because it scales up based on distance traveled. So yes, you have slightly less damage with Stampede, but the important thing about this skill is it is AoE. So this is not single target. It's hitting all enemies around your main target that you rush into. On top of that, just like Crit Rush, this is still guaranteed a critical strike. Look at the tooltip text this attack is always a critical strike. So it won't deal 6k damage. It's going to be more like 12, 13k upfront damage with all of our crit buffs. Remember, the Griffin's Ferocity set gives us that minor force buff passively all the time. Even if Stampede is your first attack, which it will get buffed by the minor force, plus some of our other passive damage, which is really good. And again, like I said, it's AoE. It also does physical damage over time. Really good skill in combination with everything else that we've got going on. Now, in most cases, we will want a heal, and that's where Cauterize comes in. That's back in the Ardent Flame skill line, your last ability. It's just a really nice passive heal. It costs Magicka, so it's not going to drain our main resource. And really, you only need this if you need healing, so you don't have to cast this very often. It's just there for emergencies. Then we got some more passive damage from Camouflage Hunter. That's from the Fighters Guild skill line. A couple of nice things about this. It does give you the passive Major Savagery, so that's about 12% weapon critical, which is really important. Also, if you attack from an angle, like the side or behind, you also proc Minor Berserk, so that's that 5% bonus damage done. We get some great passives from this as well. So yeah, this is a no-brainer on any stamina 1-bar setup. You do want that ability. And then finally, Molten Armaments. This is, of course, where we get our big flaming weapon on the front bar. This is from Earth and Heart, your second ability here. And this is our main weapon damage buff, right? So Major Brutality, that's 20% weapon damage. Increases our heavy attack damage. You can weave in some heavy attacks if you want. We get good passives from this as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. Finally, the ultimate Take Flight is from Draconic Power. This is just a fun ultimate, guys. You got to use it. Huge range on this, 28 meters. So just for fun, I will pop on this to leap from whatever group I'm killing to the next group. Just makes this build even faster and more fun to play, honestly. If you have any big enemies in the group, like elite mobs, you can save this for those enemies as well. That's a good option there. So that's the 1-bar setup. Remember, like I said, if you want to see 2 skill bars, check out the written guide. Let's go over kind of the breakdown of how this works here very quickly. So buffs, like we said, you just really need to maintain. Look at the speed, by the way. That's without our Griffins procced. But in terms of buffs, you just want to maintain your Molten here on the 1-bar setup. That's it. You can use Cauterize for the heal if you want. Remember, that's only if you need it. Now, when you come to a group, you're going to Stampede into them. That's going to do, remember, crit damage AoE, and that's going to proc Ashen Grip right away, so you can see how that looks. Let's do this guy. You see that did a lot of damage. They're already almost dead at that point. You can do a light attack into Noxious Breath, and that's the combo, really. So again, crit rush, light attack, Noxious, and that's it. Super simple, easy. Just maintain your buff there. Remember, if you can get them on an angle, that's going to proc Minor Berserk. So something like right here. There you go. That's how it works. Extremely powerful and easy to play. What about passives? Under Ardent Flame, yeah, I would pick up most of these. Combustion gives you some extra sustain. Warmth does do a little snare on enemies, which can be nice. Grouping them together. Searing Heat, that's going to buff your Noxious Breath. And then World in Ruin, this does increase the damage of flame AoEs. And it also reduces the cost of poison abilities, so that will reduce the cost of your Noxious Breath as well. Draconic Power, honestly, we're only using the ultimate in the skill line, so not all of these will be in effect. Probably Elder Dragon and Scaled Armor would be the best ones in this skill line. Earth and Heart, there are a couple of good ones here. You do want Eternal Mountain for the extra duration. Battle Roar, of course, gives you resources back on your ultimates. Mountain's Blessing gives you Minor Brutality, so that's how our weapon damage is so high on this build. So basically you get Major Brutality and Minor Brutality just for casting Molten Armaments. Make sure you get that passive, that's really powerful. And then Helping Hands, you get a little bit of stamina back from that same ability. Weapon passives, yes, you will want all of these. A couple ones to note here. Forceful, your light and heavy attacks damage 3 other nearby enemies. So this is why you can weave in either a light or heavy attack. Once you gap close into enemies, you'll actually do AoE damage. on top of all the AoE damage that we're doing already. And then we mentioned why you want a maul on this setup. Maces increase your armor penetration by 3,300. That's going to let all of your damage hit for more true damage and ignore those enemy resistances. What else? We are running Fighters Guild, Camouflage Hunter, and why is that good? You get the Slayer passive, obviously, so increased weapon damage is always nice. But Banish the Wicked now requires a Fighters Guild ability to be slotted. So if you want the extra ultimate generation, which is nice but not necessary on this build, then you do need to slot a Fighters Guild ability, and Camouflage Hunter will take care of that for you. All your racial skills, obviously, Alchemy, Medicinal Use will help with that potion duration. Let's talk about champion points next. So the ideal CP for this build, if you want to maximize the damage, you're probably looking at around 1,000 to 1,200 CP. Now, if you don't have that, I do have different CP breakdowns on my website for 300, 600, 900, and 1,200 CP. If you're at a lower CP level, I definitely recommend checking those out because I'm going to show you the most important CP stars for whatever your level is. But I'll just kind of briefly go over everything that I'm using on this build, starting in the green tree. I always start with Steed's Blessing. 20% extra movement speed on top of what we already have. You guys already saw how fast this build is. Then I'll always go 50 into Gilded Fingers. More gold while you're grinding XP. Why not? It just makes sense. Fortune's Favor and Wanderer. I just do basically the first couple stages here to unlock some better stars. Those being Breakfall. You do decrease your fall damage. This can be nice. Steadfast Enchantment. This means your front bar enchant, that weapon damage enchant, basically never decays, which is actually pretty nice. When you're grinding, you don't have to worry about it ever. Then you can unlock Treasure Hunter, better quality items in treasure chests. Rationer. I have a whole video about this, guys. You do want this if you are using either the Psijic Ambrosia, the Ethereal, or the Mythic Ambrosias. For your XP buff, this will increase those by an extra 30 minutes. That's really helpful. And then I usually just put on Liquid Efficiency. This saves potions every once in a while. In the blue tree, this is where we're going to focus on our damage and our defense. So you always start with Precision. This gives us extra crit chance, so I do recommend maxing that out. And then you can come in here, then max out Piercing. This gives us 1,400 extra penetration. That's going to mean all of our abilities do more damage, which is really good. The main star that you want here in the top right, that's going to be Biting Aura. This does extra 10% extra AoE damage, which as we saw, most of our abilities are AoE, so that is important. And some of these other slottable stars like Fighting Finesse, 10% crit damage. Remember, Stampede is always a critical strike no matter what. So with this, it's going to hit for 10% more damage. That's really useful. Wrathful Strikes, this applies more weapon damage to our offensive abilities. And then Untamed Aggression, even more flat weapon damage on top of that. So we have some really good offensive stars on this setup. If we have any more points beyond that, you can actually come back into Extended Might and then pick up Battle Mastery and specifically Mighty. Mighty gives you another 100 weapon damage to your offensive abilities. That's another good one if you have the points for it. And then beyond that, you can get some defensive stars here in the Staving Death subtree. 10 points into Quick Recovery. This unlocks Preparation. 40 points here gives you 8% damage reduction across the board. That's really nice. So that's everything in the blue tree that will be helpful to you. And then red tree, we're going to start over here. Rejuvenation gives you extra recoveries. This is awesome. Boundless Vitality, even more max health. That's good. Especially with the food that we're running, there's no health on that Lava Foot soup, right? So the extra health that we can get from the CP tree ends up being really useful. And then Ironclad, more armor. Why not? From there, you can start working down here. So I have Sprinter, which reduces my cost of sprint. Hasty is going to make me sprint even faster. And then 40 into Hero's Vigor. This is just more passive health. This is not a slottable star, so it's always on your character. Really good use of 40 points there. And then our main Sustain star, and this is really important. You might actually want to get this first on this build if you're lower level. Bloody Renewal restores 300 stamina per stage whenever you kill an enemy, up to 1,500 stamina. This is huge. If you're killing, 3-4 enemies at a time, that's a ton of max stamina coming back to your build. It's insane. So the fastest way to get there is to start in Sprinter. Just put one stage here, one stage into Hasty, one stage into Hero's Vigor, and then you'll unlock Bloody Renewal. You can start maxing that out right away. Other things I have here, I have 45 into Tumbling, and then 40 into Defiance. So again, that's sort of the maximized CP setup for the build. If you want to see lower CP outcomes, 300, 600, 900, check out the written guide for those. Last but not least, let's talk about the outfit style if you are curious about this setup. So this is a combination of two styles. It's going to be Yakuden on most of the body pieces, so like the chest, the shoulders, and then on things like my boots and gloves. That's going to be Zivkin. And then the hat's the different one here. That's the Taseki style. All right, everybody. And with that said, that's going to wrap up our Double Dragon Stamina Dragonknight build for the Flames of Ambition DLC. Hope you enjoyed the video today and found it informative. Of course, if you did, don't forget to crush that like button. Make sure you're subscribed right here for many more ESO builds just like this one. Now, for more information on this setup, remember there is that written guide down in the description and the pinned comment. That's going to go over all the different CP setups depending on your level. You'll see the basic and the mythic version of this build, as well as the 2 skill bar setup there. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out the link. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.